Indie Fish TV is honored to welcome Toronto pop, R&B, and soul star Tafari Anthony. Tafari's voice is sizable, and he's often likened to the indomitable icons Sam Smith and MNEK. However, Tafari's talent is truly his own, and both his music and his personality are unmatched. Tafari's music has earned the praise and acclaim of the well-lauded publications Paper Magazine, Gay Times, and the very famous MTV. Have you heard of it? Tafari has been nominated for a Toronto Independent Music Award, and he is a frequently heard favorite on CBC Radio, with one of his tracks named CBC's Most Influential Songs of 2016. Having taken a break from making music, Tafari returned in 2020 to a sweep of praise with the release of pop anthems Centerfold, Livin' a Dream, and No Good. For a closer look at Tafari's career in music, check him out on Instagram, Facebook, TafariAnthony.com, and of course, right here on Indie Fish TV. Eat your heart out, MTV.
When I come to you, stare in my eyes and see me crying out, 'cause I fell for you. Yes, I fell for you, but here we are, it's questioning time. Checking my phone, you know you gone. Found what you seek, 'cause you made up your mind. And when I go, you think I'm not alone. But boy, I'm not the one. Come to you, nah. I'm giving all of me. When I come to you, nah, I'm giving all of me. Whoa, wish I could give you more than you see. But when I come to you, nah, I'm giving all of me. Whoa. When I come to you, every word seems to spark another fight. Put it all on you, you put it all on me. 3 a.m. we had it again. Checking my phone, you know you gone. Find what you see, 'cause you made up your mind. Compare the words to what you thought you heard. But boy, I'm not the one. Come to you, nah, I'm giving all of me. When I come to you, nah, I'm giving all of me. Whoa, wish I could give you more than you see. But when I come to you, nah, I'm giving all of me. Whoa, can I do to prove? So what more can I do? What more can I do to prove? When I come to you, nah, I'm giving all of me. When I come to you, nah, I'm giving all of me. I wish I could give you more than you see. But when I come to you, nah, I'm giving all of me. When I come to you, nah, said when I come to you, nah, whoa, wish I could give you more. Legacy, nah, all of me.
Welcome back to Indie Fish TV. We are sitting here with Tafari Anthony, who you just watched perform his original song, When I Come to You. Welcome to the show, Tafari. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had the great fortune to have Afros on the show, and she did an amazing performance of No Good, which kind of swings into the first question. So I was reading an interview that you had done, and it said you talked about how you felt when you were writing No Good, that you were taking a more passive role, as though you were like a vessel for the song to pour out of. And this is an idea that I definitely like connect to a lot in my own writing. And it reminded me of this TED Talk that I love, that Elizabeth Gilbert, she's an author, a big famous author who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. You may have heard of it. And she talks about like back in ancient Greece, like the artists really only thought of themselves on those terms, as though, you know, they're really just a mere vessel for channeling sort of some omnipotent force, which kind of takes the pressure off, because I think like artists now, we take such an active responsibility, you know, for our own art. And it kind of like leaves us quick to degrade ourselves, like when we struggle to replicate like that fleeting moment of greatness. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about that with you, and like, what's your experience with that? And then as a sort of follow-up, like in terms of like ratio, how often do you feel like you're the vehicle versus the driver?
Pretty much all the time, to be honest. Like for me, when it comes to like songwriting, it's very much that, where like I'll just either play something or I'll get something from somebody, and I just kind of let the music tell me what it wants to be, almost. So I try not to like think about it too hard. I feel like if I think about it too hard, then it's just like I have to try too hard to like get the idea out. Whereas if I just kind of let it happen, it usually kind of works itself out, and I just kind of finesse the parts that I'm like, you know, this would make a better story here, and this, then this, there, and that. But a lot of times, I mean, like obviously things come from my own experiences, but I'm the friend that everyone comes to talk to about their problems, right? So things just kind of like sit with me in my body,
Right.
And I feel like when the right music or right thing comes out, like the story just comes out of me that way.
Right. Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you ever have those like sort of moments where, because I know that's happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to Kev, because we've talked about this kind of idea, because it's kind of fascinating to me, like where you can be doing absolutely like something that's so far removed from the creative process, like driving a car or like grocery shopping, or like, and then all of a sudden like an idea will strike you out of nowhere, you know, and you feel like, oh my God, if I don't catch this fire, like I need to like run home and, you know, like grab a guitar or whatever your tools are and like get this down, because it's almost like chasing, like I said, like sort of this omnipotent force that's kind of channeling in that moment, who's decided like you're the one to tell this story. And so you kind of are like chasing, you know, that like idea. And sometimes you catch it, and sometimes you don't, and it's just gone, you know?
Yeah, honestly, if I showed you my voice notes, like, and even like the notes, written notes, it's like a hot mess of just random things, such random times. But it's like, if I didn't have this phone with me all the time, I would lose half those ideas.
Yeah, me too.
That's crazy.
I've started using all the like the Siri voice commands on my iPhone, because I drive so often and I always get great ideas when I'm driving.
Yeah.
So like for a while I'd just be like pulling over and like pulling out a notebook. But now it's just like I always have voice memo like open. It's always ready to go. So I can just like hit record and just start like firing off whatever melodies or lyrics are running through my head.
There's this like
it's pretty sensitive.
There's this really hilarious moment in the TED Talk that Elizabeth Gilbert has, and she talks about like she had done this like interview with Tom Waits, who of course is like a fairly like comical guy, and he was like had this experience. He talks about like he's driving in his car, and he like starts rolling down the window and like kind of like, are you serious? Because like this idea came to him, and he's like, I've got two hands on the wheel. And of course she articulates it far more comedically than I do. I don't have the timing, but he's just like in his grovelly voice, like, not now, seriously. Like I don't have the time. I'm like driving my car. Is always like having this conversation with like this entity. It's like, go away.
Come back in 1 hour, please.
Come back like when I'm home and like I'm in a position to be able to like deal with this, I just love it. I just find that so like that part of like songwriting to be really fascinating too.
Yeah. I have sort of a like a two-part question,
Okay.
kind of, I guess, somewhat on the same train of thought, but specifically about songwriting. But like when you do get ideas for songs, or when you are sitting down to write, like, is there a way, do you have a process for deciding like when you have the idea that's like worth pursuing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is there like a certain feeling, or is there a certain thing that you're like, okay, yeah, this I'm diving into?
I don't know if there's a certain feeling that I get, to be honest, but for me, a lot of it is I used to like do just like mumble tracks. I would go for forever, like maybe like 5 or 10 of them. And now I'm just like, I might do like 2. And the reason I do only 2 of them now, I'm like, because I think what happens with me, if I go too hard, I think about it too much, then I just kind of like lose the vibe of it. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it might technically be a better melody, or might technically, be better in this way, but the emotion is kind of lost on me now.
Yep.
So I try to just like limit it to like, what are the first ideas that come out, which I know in practice with a lot of artists, like the first idea is always a bad idea, but I kind of challenge that, where I think the first idea is the most honest idea that you'll have. I think that, like, critiquing yourself and like, yes, use your tools and all that stuff, but like you have to still respect like the honest idea, which is the first thing that comes out from me.
I totally agree with you, man. Like, I mean, there is an art to rewriting, and refining your idea, I think, but like often that initial spark is the truest, reflection of your initial idea.
Yeah,
after that you start to overthink it, you can start to pull the life out of it.
I'm not saying like not to work on it, but like, like a lot of the meat of what the stuff that I do is usually in the first passes, and then I'll just tweak things as they go. Like maybe by the time I get to the end of the song, like where the journey has gone to, I'm gonna change something in the beginning because it just shifts a little bit. But usually it's like, first couple ideas, that's where I'm gonna work on that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah.
So the second half to that is then like, do you have a method, or like how do you know when the song is done? Like when you've like completed the idea, when the story is like, tied up. Do you have a way of knowing when it's time to let it go and let your child leave the nest?
It's the hard part. That part I have not figured out yet. I just eventually have to say I need to move on to something else.
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously I write certain things where like it may not see it to the end of the song, and I kind of just stop halfway through if I'm just like not vibing it anymore. But for the most part, if I get to the end of the song, by the time I do like all the harmonies and stuff, and I listen to it like 20 million times, I'm like, you know what, this is good. We can get this produced now.
Yeah, man, that's the whole like production end is like a whole other animal, in terms of like deciding when it's time to stop listening to snare sounds, or like, or like stop listening to guitar tones. Like, this is fine. That's kind of like my biggest, because I'm more of a songwriter than I thrive like just in the songwriting process, and I'm not a fan of the studio for that reason, because I'm kind of like somebody who's like, okay, it's not my skill set. I wrote it, like, and then I sort of like pass it off, to somebody else to kind of deal with like however sonically it's supposed to sound. And, I find like that agonizing over those kinds of things just to be so fatiguing and like kind of drains me creatively. So, but I think that, it especially in production, you can get really caught up in those like, yeah, knowing when to kind of like bounce it down, it's ready, it's fine. Send it to a mixer, send it to the mastering house, like it's done. It's cooked. But yeah, I think that's like something that artists we all kind of struggle with that, like because the moment you kind of decide that, then it's like it no longer belongs to you, and you're like, okay, well now I'm floating this out into the world. And like there's been a lot of times, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, where you're like, oh, that was not ready. I'm just like, there's like, you're like, oh, I wish if only I could like take that back. I had like so many other, especially if you tour, and if you've ever like done an album where you've like, before you've toured it, and then you go and tour it, and then after you're like, fuck, oh, sorry, pardon my language. I'll edit it out. I really wish that I could re-record that album, because you just like in the touring performance process, you just come up with so many different ideas, you know?
Yeah, but I think to me that's the beautiful part about it too, is because like you do this first version of it, or like whatever version is that's the final version that goes out, and then you know you get to live with it, and it just changes over time, which I think is really cool.
Yeah,
that music can do. Like what it means to you, you know, today, by the time you finish touring it, it's gonna mean something completely different. So you're gonna play it differently, you're gonna sing it differently, everything's gonna just be different. I think that's actually the part to me that's very special about it all.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, yeah. There's so many songs. Like Scarlett and I have been writing together for many years, probably 14 years at this point. And it's like, so there's so many songs that like still get played from earlier on, and like they mean something totally different to me now than they initially did. And like, it's kind of nice to go back and play them again and kind of like just like experience them for the first time again, you know, when you sort of realize like, oh, this applies to my life in a very different way now, you know.
Totally.
Kind of the beautiful thing, right? That's why everyone can interpret a song for themselves, you know.
Yeah.
Magic. So on that topic, are there within your songwriting, like, has there ever been any particular issues or like a life event or just any subject in general that like thus far has kind of been off limits, or like you've been sort of afraid or unready to sort of like address? Like, is there anything in particular that's like kind of off limits for songwriting? Have you ever found that?
I don't know if I would say off limits. Like, I've written about a lot of different things. It's a matter of if I will release it or not. That's where I find my limit is like,
yeah.
Like I have some songs that are like maybe more like sexual in nature and like maybe more graphic. And I'm like, oh, this is a hot song, but like, would I put this out? I don't know. But I feel like when I do writing, like I do try my best to just kind of be open to it. Because the fact of the matter is, like, if it's just me on my computer and me here in my little closet setup, like I'm the one who's gonna hear it until I decide someone else is gonna hear it, right? So for me, it's like that process is fine, because a lot of it is like me trying to like work out my thoughts or things that I may not even realize are happening to myself and trying to like figure out through my songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a matter of like the sharing part of it. That's where maybe my limit might come in.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely have some songs where like I vibe with them very much, but I'm like, maybe this is a little too personal to kind of put out there right now. But I mean, that could always change. Like even the stuff I just released last year, it's like that was me consciously trying to make sure that I was being way more honest and like open about my life and the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like none of it would I really have held back. And I think it all kind of like shaped up in a way that I feel comfortable talking about, and I'm not afraid to, or I don't want to hide from it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally, when you say like with regards to having songs that you're not prepared to release in like whatever moment you're in your life, where maybe in the future is kind of reserved for you, you know, and I have a few like that as well, you know, certain events in my life that I'm just not ready to disclose, I guess. But I've definitely written songs about them, and those songs exist. You know, and it's just, I don't know if it's like just a matter of, because sometimes music is obviously, songwriting is a means to express those traumas and events that happen to you that are difficult to process otherwise. But like sometimes it just feels like it's too, you want to be open with your audience, but at the same time, it's like, it's a real challenge, like a real balance, you know, as an artist, like what's too much. And like, is this something that I'm able to connect to an audience? Like, you know, I think about performance a lot. Like if you know, envisioning myself like with that particular song, say, that's so personal, like if I'm able to actually perform it, like if it's something that I can actually get through without feeling like literally like I'm completely naked, you know, that you know what I mean, that feeling, that that sensation of just being completely so revealing, and it's just so vulnerable that like I'm not ready for that, like that exposure, you know.
Yeah, it's a tough balance for sure. And I think, I don't know for you guys, but for me, like the process of releasing music takes a while because I do focus a lot on like, getting the writing done, then getting the production done properly. And then when that's all finished, I still want to make sure that I have, the right funding to actually release it properly or to the best of my ability. Right? So I think by the time, like, for instance, like the songs that are on this EP, like most of them are like 2 years old now, right? So it's like those experiences, I've already like dealt with them. So by the time they're coming out to the public, it's like,
Right.
I'm already good, So
Right.
like I can kind of like I can give this to you now. Here's how I was feeling, 2 years ago. I'm in a different headspace now. So it's like it's not as personal anymore, even though it's still personal to experiences, right?
Right. I want to talk to you now about your indie fish pick, which is Lucala. She's a Congolese Canadian R&B electric pop artist, and of course I'd never heard of her. You were the first to introduce me to her as your indie fish pick. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about her before your performance of her cover.
Yeah, so I mean, I picked Lucala because we're kind of, I feel like, in the same boat right now where we're trying to do more pop leaning music, and I just find right now in pop there's not a lot of Black voices. Like what happens with being a Black artist is like you kind of just get pigeonholed into being R&B, right?
Right.
And so it's like anyone is doing anything outside of that, it's like no matter what you're doing, no matter how like rock it might sound or how pop it might sound, it's like if the voice sounds R&B or like the name sounds kind of Black, you just get pigeonholed into that category. So I really respect her because she's really sticking to her guns. Like this is what she wants to do. She wants to make pop music and she's just doing it. She's not taking any crap from anybody. People have told her no all the time and she's just like, whatever. This is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. And you're going to love it. And that's the kind of attitude I think we as artists need to have, because it can be very easy to fall into a pattern of like just trying to please what people kind of want from you, as opposed to doing what you actually love to do and then let those people come to you. You know what I mean? Yeah. I have this philosophy now. It's like, if I just create the music that moves me, if it moves me, it's got to move somebody else. Even if it's one person, if it's 10,000 people, whatever. If it moves me, it's going to move somebody else. And it may take more time to get there, but that's kind of the beauty in it. And I'll be more proud of the work if I actually focus on it that way, as opposed to like trying to do what someone else wants me to do. And then, it doesn't blow up or something. I'm like, okay, well, that sucks, because you're just like, you're trying to please these people and like do these things to get to this point, and then you don't get it. And it's like, well, you don't even enjoy the music, so. Yeah.
And I think the rule of thumb, and it took me years to realize and stop myself from being somebody who chases, instead of somebody who, like you said, just kind of like allows my authenticity to sort of flourish without like, trying to measure myself to some, some trend or standard, in the moment. And I think so often we can easily get caught up in like chasing something, because it's what either is expected of us or what's happening in that moment that you think that you sort of jump on a bandwagon and within that, like once you attain, like some notoriety, then you can take on, like what's truly yours. But I think that's like the wrong approach. I think the approach is you just out of the gate, you just do what you do. And you don't pay attention to what's going on around you with regards to, like you said, like being pigeonholed or what's expected of you or what other artists are doing. And that's amazing, that Lucala is doing that. And you're right, it is. And I wish, now that you say that, it's sort of a topic of conversation that I would love to have, this idea of Black artists being pigeonholed as one particular genre within one particular genre of music, and it seems like such a limiting, a thing, something that somebody like myself or a lot of people in other genres, white artists, don't have to really experience, because you can be country or folk or jazz or whatever, but the presumption isn't like, if you see my picture, and it's like not immediately like, oh, you're a country singer, right. Or oh, you're and yeah, that's gotta be tough, to try to like society which puts you in this box, you know, to try to overcome that, you know, and that's a challenge that I obviously don't think about because, you know, I don't experience that. Thank you to Tafari Anthony for joining us on Indie Fish TV. Please stick around. We have Tafari Anthony covering the music of Luke Halla.
Yeah. Don't smile too hard, cause my teeth ain't perfect. My body don't impress you, so go ahead, curve it. Say anything you want about me, I probably heard it. Thought I deserved it, nah, I don't deserve it. I told myself, I kept reminding, said I was too busy lying. I laugh at selfish shit, but that's me hiding. Thought I was in with loving. Ooh, I've been so low for too long. Ooh, I've been with you for too long. Now I think I'm ready. Now I think I'm ready for that love shit. All I ever used to do is jump ship. Now I know I'm with it, I'm a good fit. Before I love myself, I couldn't love shit. I couldn't love shit. I couldn't love shit. Now I want that love shit, yeah. I want that love shit. Been in my head, in a voice so chatty, comparing who I am, wanna be happy. And it feels like I've been living life through a screen. It feels like I'm giving up the devil in me. I've been so low for too long. Ooh, I've been needing you for too long. Now I think I'm ready. Now I think I'm ready for the last ship. All I ever used to do is jump ship. Now I know all with it, I'm a good thing. Before I love myself, I couldn't love shit. I couldn't love shit. I couldn't love shit. Now I want the love shit. I want the love shit. Been so low for so long. Don't wanna be alone. Believed y'all for too long. The old me is dead and gone. Been so low for so long. Don't wanna be alone. Believed y'all for too long. Now I think I'm ready for that love shit. All I ever used to do is just shit. Now I know I'm with it, I'm a good fit. Before I love myself, I couldn't love. I couldn't love. Hey, I couldn't love shit. I couldn't love shit. And I want the love shit. I want the love shit. I couldn't love shit. I couldn't love shit. And I want the love shit.
Once more, that was Canadian artist Tafari Anthony covering the music of Luke Halla. For more on Tafari or Luke Halla or any of our Indie Fish artists, please subscribe to our Indie Fish TV YouTube channel, or you can follow us at We Are Wolfville on our Facebook or Instagram.
So thank you all very much for tuning in. Next week on Indie Fish TV, we have the amazing Leah Elise Canali covering the music of Kevin Wong. So join us every Thursday right here on the Indie Fish TV YouTube channel to hear the best of independent Canadian artists covering the music of other incredible independent Canadian artists.
Oh yeah, we're grooving. Grooving.